Want to learn about public policy with a group of curious fellow learners? Apply for the 12-week graduate certificate in public policy. Early bird deadline closes 27th July.
Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast by the Takshashila Institution. We are a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like bringing fresh perspectives to Indian affairs and Indian perspectives to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
This is part one of a special two-part series on India's big cat conservation story. From cheetah reintroductions to the rising lion population in Gujarat, we are unpacking the science, the policy, and the challenges in between. Welcome to a brand new episode of All Things Policy. I'm Aishwaria Sonavane, research analyst with the Indo-Pacific program at the Takshashila Institution. While our listeners might usually find me breaking down issues pertaining to Pakistan, today I pivot to explore India's evolving big cat conservation story. I'm joined by Dr. Anish Andheria, who's the president of the Wildlife Conservation Trust. He's a biologist, conservationist, and one of India's foremost voices on wildlife and habitat preservation. Welcome, Anish. It's a real pleasure to have you here with us today.
The pleasure is all mine, Aishwarya. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you. I want to start with the big picture. India has long been at the forefront of big cat conservation, beginning with Project Tiger in 1973, which went on to become one of the world's most influential species recovery programs. In recent years, we've seen bold expansions in this space, from the unprecedented rise in the Asiatic lion population in Gujarat this year to the ambitious reintroduction of cheetahs, African cheetahs, after their extension over 70 years ago in India. How do you view the overall trajectory of India's big cat policies today, Anish?
As you have already listed down, India's fared exceedingly well when it comes to conservation of large carnivores. And that is a real challenge if you look at other countries. Africa as a continent is famous for its big cats, lions and leopards. They don't have tigers there, and cheetahs are also there. But most African countries have seen a decline. And also at this point, it's important to know that in several of these countries, the GDP of the nation is in part dependent on tourism, which means these large carnivores are magnets for maintaining a stable GDP there. Even then,
Right.
it is seen that some of the countries are losing wildcats, and India is an outlier actually globally. If you look at if you put all countries together, India is really an outlier, and that's a very big statement because India has the highest density of human beings. Land is at premium. We have a huge pressure on land. There are so many people who are living below poverty line. The gap between the rich and the poor is constantly expanding. India is also developing at a breakneck speed, with nearly 23 kilometers of state highways or roads being built every single day. And that's going to go up to about 44 kilometers a day. There is
Right.
huge requirement for energy. So a lot of mining activity is happening because India still generates most of its electricity from coal. So there is always a tug of war between development, between subsistence of the poorest of the poor and conservation of wildlife. And in such a scenario, if we have been able to see a steady rise in tiger population, or in, as you had mentioned, even Asiatic lion, it means a lot because they're large ranging. They literally compete with human beings for space. And in the reasons that I've already mentioned, if with all those difficulties we are able to increase populations, it really augurs well. The cheetah reintroduction is a different program altogether. It's just started it's only about 2 years old. We have a long way to go. The habitat for cheetah in India has really dwindled. nearly 200,000 square kilometers of grasslands have got decimated in the last 150 years. And cheetah's best habitat is grasslands. And so we really don't have extensive grasslands. And so cheetahs are going to find it difficult to, expand their range, because unless we have relatively undisturbed large grasslands expanding to almost about 2,000, 3,000 square kilometers, we'll have to, I will reserve my comments in terms of whether this project is successful or not. I think it'll take at least a decade before we can say something concrete about it.
Right. Just to get your views on it, do you think are we building on the legacy of Project Tiger in a meaningful scientific way? Or are conservation practices moving into a more symbolic territory?
Yeah, this is an interesting question. So, Project Tiger has definitely done well. It is highly celebrated across the world as one of the most successful conservation programs. And it was launched in 1973. So, nearly 50 years have passed, and there has been huge success, not all across the country, but at least in, I would say, about 7 states where
Yeah.
tiger populations have really grown, especially in the last 20 years. So till about 2005, 2006, people used to be very complacent. I can say late 1990s is when most people were casual about tigers. They said that tigers have really bounced back and nothing's going to go wrong. But then there were shock waves through the conservation fraternity when
In 2014, yeah.
a lot of these celebrated tiger reserves lost all its tigers. And so there was a wake up call in 2006. The policies were rewritten. It became far more stringent. The National Tiger Conservation Authority was formed. And since then, there has been a steady rise in tiger population. However, the devil is in the detail. And if you look at population overall and compare India with other tiger range countries, then India really is at the top of it. But within, if you get into India and if you go state by state, and there are 18 states that have tigers, then really, as I said, nearly 7 states are doing well. The remaining 11 states are actually not performing too well. Many of these states are actually having less than 20 tigers. So if you look at Telangana, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Bihar, Arunachal Pradesh, these are states where, and West Bengal also, if you leave Sundarbans aside, Baksa Tiger Reserve, which is also part of West Bengal, they're not doing too well.
Yeah.
So we need to really go on the micro side to look at what are the success stories and how can we learn from those success stories from states like Madhya Pradesh, Karnataka, Uttarakhand, Maharashtra, Assam. These are the states which have done well. Tamil Nadu also, to a certain extent. What can we learn from these states, and how can we implement these conservation strategies in the underperforming states like Uttar Pradesh and the states that I've already mentioned?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's I
Yeah.
think we have done well, but as we speak today, I think there is a lot to be done. We cannot, kind of feel relaxed about tiger populations, because every single tiger habitat is undergoing huge amount of stress from several activities, developmental activities, also pressure from people who live alongside or inside these tiger reserves. And so these pressures are only going up. So we'll have to find ways of, we'll have to be far more innovative to see, to really keep up with the conservation efforts that have gone in the last 50 years. We cannot continue to do what we did in the last 50 years and expect that the tigers and other wildlife will do well. We are at a very, very important and crucial juncture, and we need to rethink our conservation strategies now. This is a time to do that if we want the tiger to live into the next century.
Absolutely. And I want to remind my listeners of the campaign that Wildlife Conservation Trust was involved in a decade ago, called the Save Our Tiger campaign. And I remember when I was briefly interning with the organization. I had the privilege to work on it. And I remember the recall value that Seva Tigers had back in the day. So that's something that I just got reminded of in our conversation. But keeping tigers aside for a moment, as much as I love to talk about our wonderful Royal Bengal tigers, I want to focus on Project Cheetah, which was launched back in 2022. As you said, it's been just less than 3 years, where India brought African cheetahs to Kuno National Park. The stated goal was to restore a lost species, revive grasslands, and create conservation linked livelihoods, right? But it has faced criticism for high mortality, unsuitable habitat, and ethical concerns. 3 years on, what would you say are the biggest takeaways from Project Tiger so far? Like you said, we will have to wait for another decade, but very early on in this process, how do you see Project Cheetah?
So yes, first of all, you're bang on when you say that there was controversy regarding the habitat where they were introduced. So
Right.
Kuno was earmarked to receive lions actually, and West and
Yes.
Madhya Pradesh have been asking for the lions for more than 20-25 years now. Um,
Yes, but a Supreme Court judgment.
Right. So that protected area was, prepared for the lion. So that habitat is very good for tigers. Lions will also do well, but cheetahs are a different ball game. They are much smaller than these animals. They don't stalk their prey. They normally chase, outrun their prey down, and they are very important predators in the savanna kind of grasslands, and so they do well in Africa, in so many countries of Africa because they have savanna. So we needed
Right.
to spend a lot of effort in creating that kind of habitat, which easily takes almost a decade or plus to decide where a habitat exists today. How do you work with local communities to spread awareness about cheetahs, and what it will take for them to live alongside cheetahs? What are those practices that are not friendly for cheetahs, and how do we change those practices without hampering the livelihood of the communities? What are the threats from free ranging dogs or domestic dogs that give a lot of disease? Plus, they hunting packs, and they could be the biggest threat to young cheetah or cheetah cubs whenever they are in human dominated landscape. So those kind of efforts had not been put. They really took the low hanging fruit, which was the Kuno habitat, which there are grasslands, but they are normally those areas where there used to be villages in the past. So their farmlands have been maintained
Mm-hmm.
as grasslands. Those are tiny compared to what cheetahs need. Otherwise, Kuno is an undulating habitat, mountainous region, ravines, and which is very, very beautiful. But as we now know, it is not capable of holding large number of cheetahs. The idea at that point was that Kuno alone will not hold them, but there is a greater Kuno landscape, another 3,500 square kilometers of habitat outside Kuno, and cheetahs will slowly
Okay.
spread in those areas, and eventually we will have about 4,500 square kilometers of habitat. A lot of it will be multiple use, which means which will have people. So that's where we are in terms of the habitat. We have really figured out that Kuno alone cannot help it. So now they have decided to move cheetahs to some of those to Gandhi Sagar, which is also in Madhya Pradesh. But there they have created a enclosure. I don't know the exact area, but I think it is almost 100 square kilometer huge enclosure, which is obviously there is grassland there, and they are planning, or they have already released a few cheetahs in Gandhi Sagar. They are also looking at
Okay.
other future sites. This they are doing so that there are multiple populations of cheetahs, and we don't know which population will do great, and so they will have to
Mm-hmm.
keep trying. That's about the habitat. Uh, as far as the mortality goes, India obviously is pretty good, and Madhya Pradesh has the highest number of tigers, highest density of leopards, ghadial, and so many other endangered species, which means the state knows how to handle wildlife. But cheetah is a different
Yeah.
ball game. They understand. about cheetah was not there. So they had sent their teams to Namibia, to South Africa, so that they can learn the trick of the trade. And there were scientists from there that were advising our Indian teams, and they had in fact stayed here for months to understand how the reintroduced cheetahs are going to survive here. So the initial mortality did happen, but as we speak now, a lot of cheetahs that came in have actually bred here, and now approximately there are about 28 cheetahs currently. Okay, so there was a dip, but then because cubs were born, and a lot of those cubs are surviving. There are some cheetahs that are in the enclosures, but some are in the wild, which means they have been released, and a female actually littered in the wild, and those cubs are also doing well. The biggest threat to cheetahs that was anticipated was from leopards, but they have not lost any cheetah to leopard, which is a great thing. And so I think the project cheetah, it was envisioned, or they wanted to restock India with cheetahs. That idea was okay, but the habitat needed to be decided much well in advance. We had almost 10-15 years to decide, but somehow we were slow on that. But now that they are here, I think people will, and the scientists and the government will have to really look at open areas of Rajasthan, some areas in Kutch, and then prepare the communities there, and do what I have already mentioned to prepare those. And those have to be big. You can't really, in Gandhi Sagar also, the enclosure is about 100 square kilometers. Kuno is 700 plus square kilometers of core. However, most of the habitat is not ideal for cheetah. So the effective cheetah habitat is much smaller there. And so if you really want to have a bright future for this cat, we will have to bite the bullet. That means we have to go and really look for at least 2 to 3 thousand square kilometers of a contiguous habitat, and in not one place, but at least 2 to 3 places, if we want cheetah to be stabilized in India. Otherwise, we'll have to always have a hybrid model of captive cheetahs as well as
Yeah.
some free ranging cheetahs. And if anything goes wrong with the free ranging cheetahs, you release some more captive cheetahs. So this can go on. I think we had signed an agreement with Namibia as well as with South Africa, and I think there is promise to they can bring about 50 cheetahs into India. However, I feel if we choose the right habitat, we don't even need so many cheetahs. Cheetahs will start doing well because many of these areas and our culture, and I keep talking about it, that people are pretty tolerant. If they can tolerate tigers and lions around them, there is no reason why they can't tolerate cheetahs, because cheetahs are not known to attack human beings. They will go for
Yeah.
livestock, small, let us goats and sheep at the max. But you have seen videos recently where a mother with three cheetah cubs was wandering very close to the village, and actually they hunted a calf, uh,
Okay.
walking right through the village, right to the village. Through a lot of motorcycles were parked there, and a lot of people were watching them, and they absolutely ignore everybody. So that kind of thing is not seen in tigers, especially. So I think in terms of culture, social acceptance, I think cheetahs are much easier to tolerate than large carnivores, and India
Yeah.
is very high. So cheetah should not be a problem from that perspective. But the biggest challenge is to find that kind of large area, that habitat, which is ideal for cheetah, for breeding cheetahs. You can have cheetahs, but do we have a stable population? No. What is a stable population? Stable population is a population where you have at least 20 breeding females, who are successfully breeding, uh, you know, so that is what our aim should be, and we have a lot more work to do on that front.
Absolutely. Cheetahs are also much, much smaller compared to other big cats that we consider. One of the conversations, one of the reasons that was put forth was to rewild and improve the grassland habitats of India to bring in African cheetahs. My question is, aren't native carnivores like wolves, golden jackal, and our striped hyenas, they are also capable of reviving grasslands just as well? Do you think cheetahs are the right species for this task? The African species, especially.
Yes, so if wolves and hyenas and jackals were capable of, doing this, we wouldn't have we would have had a lot of grassland. So I think it is about the psychology of people. Tigers do well because tigers are charismatic species. People love to see tigers. People are proud about tigers in the country, but you never hear about wolves or people talking the same way about wolves,
Yeah,
hyenas, and jackals. And ecologists
absolutely.
like me not have any difference between any of these species, but eventually a species will do well or not is dependent on what the larger the population is thinking about it in terms of policymakers, in terms of funding, in terms of the large ranging habitats of certain species. So cheetah already has a good, it's also one of the charismatic cats on the world. So
Absolutely.
they have the what do you call it, kind of a fan following, and sometimes that fan following is needed to bring in funding. It's easy to raise funding, say tomorrow. And as you know, the funding for wildlife conservation in India has actually gone down year on year. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Project Tiger was launched. Almost $1 million was raised by children in Europe, I think in Great Britain, and that money actually was sent into India, and that happened because tigers are charismatic. So fundraising in today, the government has also raised money for Project Cheetah from PSUs and corporates through the CSR route, and a lot of corporates would like to associate with cheetahs. I don't know whether they will associate with hyenas or jackals or wolves that much. So on that front, definitely cheetahs will help raise more money. And because of the cheetah, you will be, if you are able to revive large grasslands, then automatically it will do other species, grassland species specialists, wolves, hyenas, striped hyenas, that is, the jackals, Great Indian Bustard, the Bengal florican, the lesser florican, and several other grassland species will also bounce back. Currently, grassland species are all declining, the populations, because there is no good quality, extensive habitat.
Interesting. If you could, I want to understand something that we haven't seen in India. You've already mentioned that Kuno already has a healthy leopard population. Leopard is my absolute favorite big cat, but besides the point, is there a real risk of interspecies conflict undermining the cheetah project? If you could tell me the behavior between how do cheetahs and leopards interact with each other, and would that sort of affect the cheetah population?
So, see, leopards are not grassland species. So their densities will be much lower in large grasslands. They will do well in woodlands and in areas close to villages, because leopards for many centuries have are dependent on, a mix of wild prey as well as dogs, poultry, and so on. Because leopards are also much smaller than tigers, and they can survive on small sized prey. So the best cheetah habitats will not be the best leopard habitats. So that way, if you're looking at habitats in Run of Kutch, you will really not have too many leopards there. So that's the first thing. In
Right.
Kuno, British were expecting that leopards will create a lot of problems for breeding cheetahs and they may kill cubs. And that can easily happen. Leopards are arboreal, so they can, come down, take a cub and climb a tree back, and cheetah mother will not be able to do much about it. However, there has been no mortality, which means that somehow the interactions between cheetah and leopards are not as negative as one had. But it's too early to talk about it. But I really feel in Africa, where cheetahs are doing well, they are living alongside the spotted hyena, African lions,
Mm-hmm.
and leopards. So these are top carnivores in African savanna, and cheetahs are holding their own. So I think cheetah uh, ecologically are capable of handling other carnivores, but that
Right.
will happen only if the habitat is open. If cheetahs had to live in a thick jungle, then other carnivores will have much more negative impact on cheetahs, because these are others are ambush hunters, or they are pack loving, whereas cheetahs are very tiny. In fact, the average weight of a cheetah is about 35 kgs, and that of
Yeah.
a male leopard 65 kgs. The weight of a lion could easily be, a male lion could be more than 200 kgs. So there is no
Right.
comparison between power of these other large cats. Cheetah is actually much smaller, and so they will hold their own if the habitat is ideal for them. But if they are in a substandard habitat, which is more woodland, then they may have difficulty in establishing a stable population if there are tigers and leopards in that jungle.
Don't forget to tune in to part 2, where we go deeper into what's next for wildlife protection and human animal coexistence in India.
If you liked our show, dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs. Check us out at our Twitter handle @Takshashila INST or our website takshashila.org.in.